you.
You are welcome. Do you want to share with the crowd?
I can share with the people. It was a bit of a surprise. Wednesday night, I went in for an emergency appendectomy, so I was sitting on the couch Saturday, not able to move, while you were here with Randall for me. So
and while your fiance Ben was teaching.
Yeah, I couldn't even come and be like part of his own hype crew. So
we represented for you. Like he walked out of the door and I was like, "Hi Ben, hi, I'm here for you." And he was like, "What are you doing?" Fine.
Well, he had a good weekend amidst all of the taking care of things.
Yes, he is very much taking care of you. And I want to speak directly to him. Ben, if you're watching, I tried to get her to sit down and she wouldn't. So we're going to stand for the next
15 minutes, 14 minutes.
It'll be fine. It'll be fine. Okay, so catch us up. It's been just a couple weeks. But like you and I had breakfast today and talked some wedding stuff. So kind of catch us up. My dream is that the crowd gets to vote on something for your wedding.
Okay.
But you've done all the things, so we can't vote.
I've done almost all the things. Like there's a few things that I haven't done, but like, I mean, cake's done, which is gonna be really delicious.
Can't wait.
We've got
Tell us the flavor.
Oh, it's gonna be a white cake with mocha buttercream frosting in the middle, and then like a brown buttercream icing on the outside.
Very excited. Okay.
It's delicious. We have a live band, and they do nothing but mashups, so it's like right up my alley. Because I don't ever listen to full songs. If you ever sit in a car with me, I can't make up my mind. We've got flowers done. You all are still working on dresses.
Yes.
So that was a potential voting option.
We were going to do a voting option, but yeah, I spent some hours this afternoon trying to find something. I'm just not totally sold, but we'll figure it out.
There is time.
There's plenty of time. Well, I mean, we say plenty of time, but we're mere months away.
It's like 10 days, something like around that. So yes, it's getting close. But it'll be good. There might be some help that I need with picking songs because I am not a musical person.
Okay.
So.
We've given you some suggestions, but that's kind of Ben's area.
It's his area.
Okay, so your wedding really is, when we talked about what we could give the guests, the out-of-town guests as party favors, we talked about really cool things for St. Louis.
Yes.
Because you guys met in St. Louis. You've dated in St. Louis. Like you guys do a ton of fun St. Louis things.
Yes, and that's really kind of what our app question is about today, right?
Yes.
Yep, so in the app, go ahead, open it up, and we've got a question. It's what's your favorite thing to do in the Lou? And this actually came about because of a conversation you had last week.
Our team, in Team Time, I was like, what have you done that's fun this summer? Which was the app question last weekend here. And it started out with like, what are fun things to do in St. Louis? And so the zoo and botanical gardens and stuff like that. And so answer that question. We're gonna come back and kind of share what we did this week, what our families did this week. But right now,
we've got a special guest.
Very special. You haven't seen him before.
No, you haven't seen him before. And actually, he's officially been relegated to a guest.
Yes.
I don't know if he's been told that yet. But
no, we'll tell. Well, when we show up next week and he's still like doesn't have a spot marked, he'll figure it out.
Okay.
Just kidding, Randall. Come up here. You're teaching today.
Yeah.
Wherever you want to go. I'm in the mood.
Oh wow.
This is very scary. Okay.
All right.
Here.
Randall, it's been so long.
I know, right? Like I feel like we haven't seen each other in forever.
I think it's been since June.
Has it really been that long?
We have not co-hosted together since then.
That's true. Yeah, and you brought flowers. That's great.
I brought you some greenery to wish you luck today on the big stage.
Thanks. Yeah, so I'm teaching today. I'm sure you guys have already said that, so I've got to get back in there. But I thought it would be kind of fun to give you a little bit of a glimpse of what we're talking about. We're going to be in Luke chapter 6, and we're talking about a crowd of disciples and what that can look like, what that should look like. And something that I'm not going to show them in there, but I thought it'd be kind of fun to show my people, you guys online, like what my crowd of disciples, the guys that really kind of helped shape and form me in my life with Jesus. So that's my crowd of disciples right there. Come on.
Ooh.
I know what you're thinking. That is awesome, right? So like, here's the thing. My brother's like, you're going to be so embarrassed about that picture when you're older. Are you kidding me? That is awesome. So if you can't pick me out, I'm the guy on the far right. Is that the far?
No, the left.
The far. I'm the guy on the end, not the guy
the guy on the end with more hair.
With the more hair, because
Yes.
it's awesome. So anyway, those are my friends, the guys who loved Jesus and helped pointed me towards Jesus, and so I'm eternally grateful for those guys just in my life. And when I was in high school and then into college, we're still friends now. So it's just been great. So
Well,
so I'm not showing everybody else that picture. I might show them later, but you know.
No, it's just for the pre-service. Like,
Just for
y'all
you
are
guys.
special.
So
You've been with us since October of last year.
that's right. So anyway, I got to go because they're calling me. So Natalie, you can come back, and I don't know what you're talking about, but I'm sure it's great. I'll see you guys in a few minutes. All right, got to go.
Thanks, Randall.
We really tried to get, if you guys have not seen Randall's son, tried to get a side-by-side because
Yes.
it's, besides the hair color,
Yes.
they're twins. It's identical.
Yeah, bone structure, like
All the things.
It's kind
All
of
the things.
scary.
There's zero doubt.
Well,
That is Randall's son.
besides Randall teaching this weekend,
Yeah.
it's also the final weekend for
Yeah.
Backpack Attack donations.
Yeah, so things were coming in last week. It was awesome. And actually, the lobby is like a buzz right now.
Yeah.
People are bringing their stuff in. We have a ton of volunteers out there.
Even like little
There was
volunteers.
actually a little girl that I was like, do you need help? She had like 3 huge backpacks. It was like dragging them across the lobby. It was awesome. So thank you all for those of you who have given. If you are still like, oh shoot, I missed it. We are open till 12:30 on Sunday, and you can drop off your supplies at all the campuses. If you're not sure if you can make it or can't go to the store, which they're crazy right now.
They are
'cause it's
super crazy tax-free
weekend.
weekend.
You can also just drop off a check at any of our campuses.
Yeah, and I want to tell a really cool story about that.
Yes,
so
yes,
this
please do.
past week, I went to my soon-to-be nephew's house. They were having a lemonade stand, and their whole point was to raise money for Living Water, or not for Backpack Attack.
Yeah,
Sorry,
you know, it all
so
runs
many
through.
kids raising
Christmas,
money.
yes, that's all.
But they're raising money for Backpack Attack, and I kid you not, they were standing there behind their table, and when somebody would come up to them and ask for a glass of lemonade, they would be like, okay, that's $1, and all the money is being raised to buy kids backpacks.
They weren't giving change.
No, well, most people didn't want the change after
That's
that.
awesome. That's awesome.
But they ended up raising almost $400.
So cool.
It was so sweet.
Because one of your nephews is going to school.
He's starting
And so
kindergarten this
it's
year.
practical for him, and he understands it, and so I
Yeah,
love
and
it.
it was one of those where they just kind of thought it up on their own after watching their Uncle Ben teach the weekend before, and they're like, that's what we need to do.
So cool. So cool. So you also, just like they kind of serve their community, you can also serve. Like we said, there's little ones running around, but there's deliveries that still need a few more volunteers.
There's the
parties.
parties, yep. So there's tons of opportunities to be able to serve. You can just go on to thecrossing.church/backpack, and you'll be able to find all of those opportunities. I know those teams definitely need some help.
Yep.
And from what I've been told, some of the most life-giving things
Yes.
are the drop-offs and those
That's
parties.
what I've heard. Yep, absolutely, absolutely. Okay, so really, that's a way that we kind of let people in St. Louis know that, hey, the crossing is for you.
Yes.
And we talked about it last week, but we're also doing For the Lou this summer. And I saw on Instagram this week, how to write a Google review.
Yes.
Did you see that?
I
love it
did.
because we had just reviewed a place we went to, and that's a simple way that you can say we're for this community. But we talked about this at the top, but we're both going to kind of tell what we didn't mean for it to be this way,
it did not.
but we both had some let's get in St. Louis and do some fun things. So this week on Thursday was my daughter's 10th birthday, and we asked her what she wanted to do, and we ended up we did it all, guys. We ended up going to the aquarium, going to Steve's Hot Dogs, which is
So good.
so good. If you have not done that, you absolutely have to go there. And then we went to the St. Louis Zoo, which is hands down our favorite place in St. Louis. And our team, like we talked about at the beginning, the team that I get to serve with on the weekend, we kept going around and talking about just the cool things that St. Louis has to offer. Tell your story, and then
Yeah.
we want to hear the app answers.
Absolutely. So earlier this week, I got a call from somebody saying, hey, I've got 2 tickets to the Muni on Friday. Would you want to go? And I was like, well, Ben's gone. I was like, wait a second, my dad just got back in town. So I texted him, I asked him if he wanted to go with me, and we decided to do kind of like a father-daughter date night. And we went to a local restaurant on the hill that we'd never been to before. We love going to the hill, by the way, but we always go to the same places. So tried somewhere new. Then we went to Clementine's for ice cream because it's really just
Delicious.
the best. And then we went to the Muni. And what I love about the Muni is it's unlike anywhere else where there's live theater because most places, everyone's really stoic and they're paying attention. But I kid you not, behind me, there are rows of people just singing the songs to the sound of music.
Those are very high-pitched songs. Was it did it sound good?
There was a reason they were in the stands.
Okay.
But they were enjoying it. And it was just such a cool way to kind of just be in community with people all over St. Louis.
Yep. When I just asked my team, what is something fun you've done in St. Louis, Forest Park kept coming up.
Yes.
The Muni, Art Hill, sledding on Art Hill, the Symphony at Art Hill. So David is going to hop over. You can't even see him, but he's giving us answers. Oh, look at that.
Okay.
Musicals.
Yep. Oh, this is one we talked about. There's a lot of trails in St. Louis. If
Yes.
you're into hiking or you're kind of weary about going back to a gym,
Yes.
gyms aren't for me anymore. I've decided it's fine.
Yeah, you have a gym in your basement
I
now,
have a gym
so
in my basement, but I love hiking. David, what was that trail you were mentioning earlier? Indian River Creek. Okay.
And it's like out in St. Charles County.
Okay.
Winsville. Very
Yep.
cool.
And there's one right around my
Yes,
new house.
I love Al Foster. It's
Okay.
right along the Merrimack, and I think that's beautiful. So hike the trails. What else?
Oh, City Museum. Yes.
That's always a good one.
absolutely.
Okay, I have to tell on myself. So earlier I was like, we have the Cardinals. It's a great team. And then I had to ask around, are they a great team this year? I don't know. I don't know if they are good, but always going to a baseball game is really fun. Are they good this year? Anybody?
You could
They're
tell
not.
us.
David's saying not so great.
Oh, well, I just like to go for the food.
Yeah. And the atmosphere, that's
Yes,
always fun.
uh-huh.
But we did talk about how it's not just summer stuff. I mean, we have the
No.
St. Louis Blues.
We have the St. Louis
Those
Blues.
are good.
I'm more of like a winter sport fan. I don't like to sweat.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
So that's more up my alley. But one of my favorite things is coming up in September, and that's Clayton Art Fair.
Yes.
Which downtown Clayton, they shut down the streets, and there are artists from all over the country, but also locally from St. Louis. And it's not just them showing off their work. You can buy some of their work, whether
Very
it's
cool.
jewelry, paintings, sculptures. It's a whole bunch of things. And that's coming up early September. I mean, there's always stuff going
Oh,
on.
yeah. Yeah, we talked about sledding down Art Hill.
Okay.
Oh, David, you have a low battery. You're going to have to plug this in before the service.
Definitely some trends
Oh.
in foods. too.
Yes, try. Well, speaking of food,
Yeah.
we're going to go to dinner
We are going to dinner tonight.
later. So if anybody has ideas for where we could go, put that in the app, and David would be paying attention.
Or you
let
can
us
put
know.
it in the chat. Just let us know so we
Yeah.
can support another
Local
local restaurant.
business. We love to botanical gardens. And last year the Crossing, if you are new to the Crossing, you may not know, but last year the Crossing got to go to botanical gardens all together for Garden Glow. That was so fun.
Glad you said it the right way.
What was it?
The big debate was it Garden Glow or
the
Garden Glow? But
and
it's Garden Glow.
It was Garden Glow. Yep. Okay, going to the hill. You
Yep.
said, yep. All right.
Yeah.
You guys like all the same stuff we do? Oh, you know what? Live outdoor concerts and festivals. Somebody just told me. He was like, it doesn't matter where it is.
Yeah.
St. Louis has a bunch of them.
Yeah, they do. And what's really cool, have you been down to the Arch since they've renovated all the grounds yet?
Not in the Arch, but we've walked
Been around there?
Yeah.
So they've got all those like kind of alcoves for concerts
Oh,
now.
cool.
Yeah, so there's tons of stuff always going on there. Ben and I actually just went to Soulard Market the other weekend.
Yes.
And there's always like live music going on down there, whether it's just kind of local guys
Yeah.
who are just playing the saxophone, and it's just a fun experience.
Very cool. Well, if you were saying you guys rattled off so much and I don't know what to do, that's okay. We actually have a website. It's just thecrossing.church /for-the-Lou, and it will give you, I think, hundreds. Have you counted? I never counted.
I can't count that high.
Okay. That's a problem in your job, but that's okay. There are a lot of different things you can do. It's actually, I think, on the screen now. But if you just scroll from like a review like we talked about to one of the things that I keep trying to do, we have a new mailman and he goes too fast, but I just want to know his name.
Oh,
Like
I
that's
like
just
that.
a way that we can be for the Lou.
Absolutely. I would have to sit at the pavilion in my neighborhood to
Oh,
catch
you
my
don't have a
mailman.
mailbox,
But, like they're there for a while because it's just a bunch of boxes. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, definitely go to our website, thecrossing.church /for-the-Lou. There's tons of opportunities. It's not just, like going out to restaurants and stuff like that.
Yeah.
There's ways to physically serve.
Yeah.
And we would love for you all to take part in that with us.
Absolutely. So, well, we are going to jump in the auditorium in just
Just a moment.
a minute.
Yep.
So,
So-
any last restaurant suggestions? We'll take them.
Put them in the app or the chat. But just wanted to remind you, if there's anything else that you need whatsoever, remember we've got moderators on standby. We've got pastors who are willing to sit and pray with you, whatever
Absolutely.
it is that you need.
Yep.
And you can also always email pastors@thecrossing.church for anything that you need. And we are just so excited to have you
Yep.
here with us this
Yep.
weekend.
All right. We can't wait to worship with you. All right.
Will you stand and declare these words with us? I'm gonna gonna see a victory. I'm gonna see a victory. For the battle belongs to you, Lord. I'm gonna see a victory. I'm gonna see a victory. For the battle belongs to you, Lord. I'm gonna see a victory. I'm gonna see a victory. For the battle belongs to you, Lord. I'm gonna see a victory. I'm gonna see a victory. For the battle belongs to you, Lord. I'm gonna see a victory. I'm gonna see a victory. For the battle belongs to you, Lord. I'm gonna see a victory. I'm gonna see a victory. For the battle belongs to you, Lord. I'm gonna see a victory. I'm gonna see a victory. For the battle belongs to you, Lord. I'm gonna see a victory. I'm gonna see a victory. Oh yeah, 'cause the battle belongs to you, Lord. Oh.
So the Apostle Paul writes a letter to a church in Corinth, and this is what he tells them. In chapter 15, he says, "Thanks be to God, he gives us the victory through our Lord Jesus Christ." See, there are some of you who are exploring who Jesus is. You have questions about that, and we're going to explore many of those questions together. But there are many of us who could tell you about the victory we've seen in our lives because of who Jesus is, because of what he has done for us. So Paul continues. He says, "Therefore, my dear brothers and sisters, stand firm. Let nothing move you. Always give yourselves fully to the work of the Lord, because you know that your labor in the Lord is not in vain." And guys, that is really where we could say that's where we're headed all day today. This is what we're going to celebrate together. And so here's what we're going to do. I'm going to pray over us. Wherever you are, you're already standing, so let's pray together, and then we are going to spend some time giving thanks to God for who he is and for what he's done. Are you ready? Father, we thank you for your goodness. We thank you for how good you are in our lives. We thank you for the good things that you give us. God, we thank you for your son Jesus and for how he has saved us because of his work on the cross. And now we get to experience the newness of life with him. God, we thank you. We worship you. In Jesus' name, amen. Amen. Let's sing together.
Come on, let's do this. We have so much to be thankful for. Our God is good, amen? Amen. Let's hear your voices singing it out. Wandering into the night. Wandering into the night. And wanting a place to hide this weary soul. This bag of bones. And I tried with all my might, but I just can't win the fight. I'm slowly drifting. I'm a vagabond. And just when I ran out the road, I met a man I didn't know, and he told me that I was not alone. Here we go. He picked me up, he turned me around, he placed my feet on solid ground. I thank the Master and I thank the Savior, because he healed my heart, he changed my name, forever free. You're the God of covenants, of faithful promises. Time and time again, you have proven you do just what you said. Though the storms may come and the winds may blow, I'll remain steadfast and let my heart learn when you speak a word, it will come to pass. Great is your faith. give you my life. I give you my life. I give you my trust. Jesus. And you are my God. And you are enough. Jesus. Let's sing that again. I give you my life. I give you my trust. Jesus. And you are my God. And you are enough. Jesus. Oh, Jesus. My heart is yours. My heart is yours. My heart is yours. Take it all. Take it all. My life in your hands. My heart is yours, Lord. My heart is yours. Take it all. Take it all. My life in your hands. I lay down my life. I take up my cross. Jesus. For you are my God. Whatever the cost. Jesus. Oh, Jesus. My heart is yours. My heart is yours. Take it all. Take it all. My life in your hands. My heart is yours. My heart is yours. Take it all. Take it all. My life in your hands. You can take it all. Take it all. My life in your hands. All to Jesus I surrender. All to you I freely give. Oh, I will ever love and trust you. In your presence I will live. Oh, and all to Jesus I surrender. All to you I freely give. And I will ever love and trust you. In your presence I will
Oh, I tell you, I look at those stories of people, that what those stories represent when they're stepping into the water of baptism, and I'm just so grateful that people have said, my heart is yours, Jesus, I belong to you. And Jesus hears that prayer and he answers it, right? Why don't you go ahead and have a seat here in Chesterfield? Again, I'm so grateful for how God is moving in every story, every person you see stepping into the water of baptism. There's a whole story how they could tell you how Jesus invited them into this life and how they took steps to try to explore who he was, and they asked questions and they got to a place where they made a decision to place their trust in him, and then they go public with that decision through baptism. And I got to tell you, for so many of us, it has been over 2 years since we've been able to celebrate baptisms together. And I am so excited that September 12th is just a few weeks away. I cannot wait to do this together as a church. Are y'all ready for this? Yeah. So there's some of you who are still processing through all this, whether you're watching online or you're here. There's some of you who are still going, I have questions about baptism. I think maybe it's the next step for me, or I don't know if it's the next step, but I'd like to ask some questions, or I'm still trying to figure out who Jesus is. Wherever you are in that, it would be our honor to talk to you. Please come find one of us and let's have that conversation, because it's coming up. It's not too late to register. We would love to have you be a part of that if that's what God is calling you to. Now, for the rest of us, I hope you're making plans. Sunday afternoon here at this campus, September 12th, come. It is going to be so much fun. We will celebrate together what God is doing in our midst. We'll see a tangible example of how he is still at work, even after these last couple of years we've been through together. So join us. Now, that's in a few weeks. Let me talk to you about today real quick. Did you guys notice when you came into our lobbies here in Chesterfield that it was a little messier than usual? So it's Backpack Attack weekend, and we're collecting school supplies for students all over the St. Louis area to try to ensure that no matter where you are, that you get to start off this school year with everything you need to have a great school year. And if you're like one of those people who's going, oh, that's this weekend, and you forgot, it's not too late. We'll be collecting supplies until 12:30 Sunday afternoon at all of our campuses. So you can drop supplies off through the weekend. We'll be taking them. So it's not too late, okay? But once again, when you think what our students have been through over these last couple of school years, how great will it be for us to ensure that they get to start off on the right foot? Let's help them out. Let's collect these supplies and let's do this together, okay? I'm so grateful that I get to be a part of a church that is generous in times like these, that gets to say, I want to be a part of what God's doing. And the truth is, we see that in moments like Backpack Attack, but we see it every weekend through our offering as well. So we're going to move into our time of offering now, and this is just that. It's an opportunity for us to be generous with what God's entrusted to us. It's also an act of worship. And so if you are fairly new here and you are still checking things out, you don't have to participate in this part of the service. But if you're watching online and you'd like to give, then there's going to be some ways to give that are going to come up on your screen. Here in Chesterfield, you can participate in the same way, or there are black receptacles as you leave out each exit there, and you can drop your offering in those on your way out. But thanks again for joining us. One of my favorite pastors, Randall Littleton, is going to be up here in just a moment to give us a message. So you guys have that to look forward to. We're so glad you're here.
Are in the middle of this series on Luke, and we've been here for a little while now, and we've been talking about, like, it seemed like every week, like one of the themes is Jesus is inviting us to follow him, right? Like he's inviting us to be his disciple and to follow him into this grand adventure. In fact, the book of Luke kind of starts off that way, right? Remember, we've read this a couple of times in this series, but the angels show up to the shepherd, and we read this: I bring you good news that will cause great joy for all the people, right? So this is such good news that the shepherds, they can't keep this news to themselves, and they end up telling everybody that they run into. Good news for all the people. So all the people, right? That's me, that's you, that's the person sitting next to you, that's your neighbors, that's our community, that's the person that you love dearly, that's the person that you can't quite stand as much as the person you love dearly. Like it's this community, it's a region, right? It's all people, it's everybody. And so the rest of the book of Luke begins to tell the account of how it gets to all the people. And also in Matthew, the Gospels, like Matthew and Mark and John, and even into the book of Acts, which Luke also wrote. Like it just begins to tell the account of, like, this is how that good news spread. So we're going to be in Luke chapter 6 today. I want us to look and spend most of our time talking about the group of people that began to follow Jesus. So leading up to Luke chapter 6, you see Jesus going around and he keeps inviting people into this story, inviting people to follow him. And more people do. So I kind of want to look at the makeup of these people that were now following Jesus, these crowds that began to show up, okay? So we're going to be in Luke chapter 6. So if you have your Bible, you can turn there. If you don't, we'll have it up on the screen. You can use the Bible app on your phone. You can use the Google. There's all kinds of options, right? So Luke 6, verse 12. One of those days, Jesus went out to a mountainside to pray and spent the night praying to God. When morning came, he called his disciples to him and chose 12 of them, who he also designated apostles. Simon, who he named Peter, his brother Andrew, James, John, Philip, Bartholomew, Matthew, Thomas, James, son of Alphaeus, Simon, who was called the Zealot, Judas, son of James, and Judas Iscariot, who became a traitor. He went down with them and stood on a level place. A large crowd of disciples was there, and a great number of people from all over Judea and Jerusalem and from the coastal regions around Tyre and Sidon who had come to hear him and to be healed of their diseases. So Greg talked a few weeks ago about the Sermon on the Plain. Well, that's here. We're not going to talk about that. Again, I want to talk about what we just read happening. Jesus is choosing his disciples, right? But before we talk about that too much, did you see how this whole thing started? Jesus went out to a mountainside to pray and spent the night praying to God. Okay. Like right there, conviction number one, right? Like how well do we do with that? I mean, Jesus is on the cusp of like launching his public ministry. He's choosing his disciples. And so what does he do? He goes away to be with the Father and to pray. So right before Jesus is doing this, we see this a handful of times, right? Like Jesus getting away from the crowds to spend time with his Father. See, he knew that this was like a really important decision. And so he knew he needed to be with the Father. So over and over, we see Jesus modeling that for us, going away to be with and commune with the Father. So how do we do with that? If I'm being honest, like I'm hit or miss, right? Like I would be embarrassed to confess how many times like I'm faced with a big decision and I just kind of jump headlong into it, right? See, like I don't know if you know this about me, but like I'm the smartest guy that I know. Well, hold on. Like I know a lot of smart people even, right? But I don't know what it is for you, but maybe it's like you're just too busy or you're just moving too fast and you don't think about it. Like maybe you're not sure that God's even paying attention. And if he is paying attention, like is he even going to do anything? So I don't know what it is for you. But can I just say that like we're invited, like we're encouraged to take everything to God. Like the creator of the universe, who knows me infinitely better than I know myself, invites me in. See, come to find out, like I'm not actually nearly as smart as I think I am. And in the end, all of my abilities, all of my excuses just fail. And if I'm truly honest, like I am in desperate need of God's wisdom, his provision, his power, his grace, his mercy. And God is the one who's faithful, and he meets me right where I am, and he invites me in. So Jesus right here is showing us what we have to do. Like we have to make this a priority. Jesus knew the importance of being with the Father, and we need that. The writer of Hebrews says this. He says, "Let us then approach God's throne of grace with confidence so that we may receive mercy and find grace to help us in our time of need." So because of Jesus, we get to approach God's throne. And we get to know that he hears our prayers. It doesn't matter how big or how seemingly small they may feel. He longs to be with us. So I tell you what, but before we go too much further, can we take a second and do just that? So I don't know what you came in here with. I know that there's a lot of things out there that we are facing both corporately, together, as well as things that are very, very personal. But the God of the universe invites us in and longs to be with us and longs to hear our prayers. James says if anyone lacks wisdom, we should go and ask. So let's just take a second and let's do just that. Let's now, just together, let's approach God's throne. God, I am undone by the fact that you are here with us right now, that you are paying attention to me, that you are inviting me into a relationship with you. So God, meet us where we are. God, you know what we're bringing to the table, God. You know that what we're facing. You know what we're up against, God. Give us exactly what we need right when we need it, God. I thank you that you are the one who is faithful. And it's in your name that I pray. Amen. So Jesus gets away. He knows he needs to spend time with the Father, so he prays, and he prays all night. Then we read something that, to be honest, I always seem to skip over. I jump right into the picking of the 12 disciples. But that's not what we read, is it? Verse 13. When morning came, he called his disciples to him and chose 12 of them, who he also designated apostles. So there was more than 12 disciples? Well, that's what it says, right? He gathered his disciples and then he picked 12. So there was more than 12 disciples. The 12 that we get to know by name, he designates apostles. Well, what's that? Is there a difference between a disciple and an apostle? Well, a disciple is a follower, a student, someone who's being shaped and formed by the teacher. And an apostle is a disciple that's being specifically sent out for a special reason, given special authority from Jesus. So are there apostles today? Because I took a spiritual gift test once and it said I had the gift of apostleship, or I know somebody who's called apostle. So it's what does that mean? So those are kind of two different things. What we see here is Jesus specifically calling out 12, who he says, you guys are going to be apostles, and we see him use them in supernatural ways, who gives them special authority that was for right then. So those are the 12 apostles. The spiritual gift, or maybe if you hear the title of apostle, that's think of it this is a person who launches ministries or churches and then begins to oversee them. It's a little bit different than what we see here that Jesus is calling out the 12. But Jesus calls out these guys. He says, Simon, who he named Peter, his brother Andrew, James, John, Philip, Bartholomew, Matthew, Thomas, James, son of Alphaeus, Simon, who was called the Zealot, Judas, son of James, Judas Iscariot, who became a traitor. So this list is also found in Matthew 10 and Mark 3, a couple of places in John. When you read those accounts, you'll read a couple of different names. So what's that about? A couple of these guys went by two names. We just saw one here, Simon, who's called Peter, Matthew, Levi, and then Judas, son of James, would be Thaddeus. So like any group of people, some of these guys belong to other groups, right? And those groups hated each other. So again, Luke's calling this out. Simon the Zealot hanging out with Matthew, the tax collector. So we're not going to go into a ton of details here, but just know this. The Zealots were this extreme group of Jewish nationalists, right? They were so anti-Rome that they're known to break out into violent outbursts to solidify their space in Rome, and they absolutely did not like people associated with Rome, especially like traitors. Some of these guys, like a subgroup of the Zealots, were the Sicarii. And these guys were like the mercenary, if you will. Like they would have these Sicarii daggers, like these little curved daggers that they would hide up in their sleeve. Now, why would they do that? Well, this way, when they're in crowds, when they're in tight quarters, they could come up beside a traitor, kind of give him the old knife and not get caught, right? So it doesn't say anywhere that like Simon the Zealot was one of those guys, right? But it's safe to assume that like Simon would have known who those guys were. And they especially hated tax collectors. Well, now, why would anybody hate tax collectors? True story, like this past week, I was literally on hold for 3 hours with the IRS. Like it was crazy. Don't worry, don't write a story or anything. They actually called me, something about my Social Security being shut off and the authorities were coming after me. And so it's okay. Look, it wasn't cheap, but we got it all worked out, right? No, it was stupid tax return stuff and nobody knew how to help me, so they kept bouncing me around, and 3 hours later. So, tax collectors charged by Rome to collect taxes. So they had this quota they had to meet, and anything above that quota, they got to keep. So they were the epitome of a traitor. And here they are hanging out with a zealot, right? Like these are the very people that a zealot would quite literally want to kill. And a zealot and a tax collector are hanging out in the same crowd, in the same group that Jesus handpicks. Like, that's a group that only Jesus could put together and make work. And I don't know about you, but I find that incredibly comforting, right? I mean, I like to think that there's a group of people who are following Jesus who vehemently disagreed with each other about politics, no less. How in the world did that work? I think they found something. They found someone that was bigger than their disagreements, somebody that they could anchor their lives to, as opposed to like a political ideology or a political figure. Instead of that, they anchored their life on Jesus. They put aside their own agenda, their own life, to follow him. And so here they are, joining in, linking arms, and following Jesus. Each one of those guys had to, in a very real way, lay down their own life in an act of obedience and follow Jesus. Sometimes, like you, I'm sure, like I read the headlines and I look and see what somebody posts online or tweets out into the universe, and I'm like, man, like we have got a long way to be like unified on anything. Like I totally disagree with that person's opinion. I can't believe they think that. And look at all these well thought out comments in the comment section. Like I totally disagree with all of you guys, right? Like how in the world could somebody think that Oklahoma's move to the SEC is somehow going to, make them out to be the subpar athletic program? Like they'll be fine, thank you very much. That was for you. So Jesus here, he's got this core group of disciples that would have hated each other and what they stood for. So it gives me hope that like whatever it is that divides us, like following Jesus could actually bring us together. Like we have a common mission, a common calling. And if we keep on reading, we find out that the group of disciples that Jesus picked was actually like from a crowd. So he went down with them and stood on a level place. A large crowd of disciples was there, and a great number of people from all over Judea, from Jerusalem, from the coastal region around Tyre and Sidon. So Tyre and Sidon, what you need to know is, again, it's the coastal region. It's modern day Lebanon. It's about an hour's journey to the Sea of Galilee, What you need to know for now is that like these cities have a storied history with the people of God. They had turned their back on God. They were a wicked city. But here you find people from those cities making a day's trek just to hear what this Jesus guy had to say. Because like word is getting out. But did you catch that? Like a large crowd of disciples. So like how many people are in a crowd? Well, 3's a crowd for some, right? It says he picked 12, so there was at least 13. Could you imagine if it really was 13? You know, it's like, and he picks 12. Oh, Eugene, I'm so sorry. We're gonna go a different direction here. Like, it's just awkward, right? The one guy's by himself. It's like, no, it's a crowd of disciples. So I do it just for fun. If you have the app, you can log into that. We'll post a question here. Like, what's the biggest crowd that you've been a part of? Like, where was it? How many people do you think were there? Turn to your neighbor, lean over, and tell them that story. Like, I was in this crowd and this is what it was. So do that, and I'll be back in just a second, all right? I know what you're thinking. No, that's not me. Those are my dance moves, but that's not me. This is like from like 12, 13 years ago at some music festival. The video is actually like 10 minutes long, and we kind of shrunk it into like 30 seconds. But it's crazy, right? It starts off with like one guy dancing, and by the end, it's like a sea of people, right? I mean, like it's insane. Some of you guys are like, man, if I was there, I'd be the fourth guy in because that's my jam, and I love that. And like others, you guys, you're freaking out just a little bit, going, that's not me. You know, so no, we're kind of all over the map, right? Some of you guys love being in the crowd, love crowds. Others of you guys like eke more towards the 3's a crowd, right? Me, like I'm somewhere in the middle. I get it. That's a cop out. I know, but like I'm not like a. Like if there's a big group of people or something, like in the party or whatever, like I would find the corner or the couch, and it would be me and a handful of people, and we would have a grand old time just hanging out right there, right? But at the same time, like crowds don't like freak me out. I mean, you guys are kind of freaking me out right now, but like big, I don't run for the door with big crowds, so it's okay. When I was in college, a buddy and I, we'd go to these concerts, and he would be the guy that would be like right in the middle of the mosh pit, because those were the concerts we went to. And I would be the guy who would be kind of out on the end and just kind of taking the whole thing in. Like that's where I was, right? So he loved being in the middle of the crowd. Me, like not so much. There's also the contrarian part of me, where it's like if I see a big group of people doing something, I'm probably gonna think that that's lame, and I'm gonna go do my own thing over here, right? Side note, like I'm well aware that we're talking about crowds and we're in the middle of a pandemic. Like I get it, like that is not lost on me. Like you guys, like I'm watching the Olympics, and it's just a little different now, right? Like I'm watching, volleyball, and I'm watching, the track and field stuff, and watching swimming earlier, and the gymnastics, and there should have been like arenas filled with people cheering on our athletes, right? But it was like, weirdly a little bit quiet. And that's how it's been lately watching sports on TV. It's like, that's not how it's supposed to be. And I know that like there are some of you who are like, nope, I'm jumping back in. I'm in the thick of the crowds already. And others of you guys are like, man, I don't feel comfortable leaving my house yet. And most of us are like somewhere in the middle. I think we would all agree that we'd love to just fast forward in time and like this is behind us and we tell the grandkids about it, right? So to answer the question though, like for me, the biggest crowds that I've been in, man, like I don't know, I've been to college football games where there's like 90 some odd thousand people and it's just electric and it's awesome. Was at a music festival in the middle of nowhere, Pennsylvania, 125,000 people. That was crazy. I have a coworker whose family every year goes to the Indy 500. 250,000 people. Like that's ridiculous, right? But you guys, here's what you guys had to say. Okay, the big house for Michigan football, like that's on my list. The 96 Atlanta Olympics, awesome. Last game of the World Series downtown, U2 at Busch Stadium, 4th of July downtown, fireworks at Disney World. Yeah, like those are like really, really big crowds, right? But here's the deal, like crowds, it doesn't always have to be about the sheer number, right? Like I've been in concerts like at the basement of a club or something and it's sold out and it's packed and it's just electric and awesome. And it might as well be like a concert, like in an arena, right? Like the high school crowd, is it gonna, it's not gonna be 1,000 people, maybe not even 100, but it's a crowd nonetheless. So we read in Luke 10 that Jesus sends out 72. On a couple of occasions, we read that he fed the crowds. One of those times, there was 5,000 men, and then you add on the women and kids. Luke 12 tells us that there were many thousands gathered. So it's safe to say when Luke's saying that there's a crowd of disciples, that it's a lot of people. And Jesus had this interesting relationship with the crowds, didn't he? Like everywhere that Jesus went, there were crowds. They were curious. They were wanting to be healed. They were hurting. They were hearing words that had power and authority. There was something about Jesus that was intriguing. His hometown didn't know what to do with him. They didn't like some of the things he was saying. We read about how Jesus would like say a difficult thing and people would walk away. Like they were in it when things were like really cool. They're getting fed and there were some miracles, but then he would talk about sin. He would say something really difficult and they'd be like, I'm out. And they would walk away. It would ultimately be a crowd that calls for the death of Jesus. But these crowds were made up of like peasants, shepherds, farmers. They were the common folks. They were also the religious elite. They were the highly educated. They were the poor and the wealthy. They were Israelites and Gentiles. They were men and women and even kids, basically like everyone. And over again, we see Jesus respond to the crowds with compassion. Like there's one time he sees the crowd of people and he looks to his disciples and says, man, they're like sheep that are without a shepherd. But here, we have a crowd of disciples. Actually, what does it say? It says, a crowd of disciples and a great number of people. Now, I don't think Luke's making a distinction between like, well, a crowd is this big and a great number is this big. No, he's saying that there's two groups of people here. One of these groups of people is following Jesus. Not like following Jesus, like wherever Jesus went, they were. No, like following his teaching. Like in a very real sense, they were orienting their life towards him. The things that he said they would take home and put into practice. Now, we talked about this a few weeks ago, like in the middle of the Sermon on the Plain. Jesus says, why do you call me Lord, Lord, and you don't do what I say? Like everyone who comes to me and hears my words and puts them into practice, I'll show you what they're like. And he goes on to tell that story about the builder who built his house on firm foundation. So a disciple is someone who's following Jesus so closely, they begin to sound like Jesus. They begin to think like Jesus. They begin to love like Jesus. They were associated with him. They went home and they put into practice the things that he said. The other group was like just around. I mean, they heard his teachings. They knew what he was saying. Like they showed up, but not really. Like they came and they went. They heard, but they didn't obey. I mean, that's the difference between being a disciple versus not, right? It's obedience. Am I willing to obey what Jesus tells me? Am I willing to obey what Jesus says when it's not easy, when it's not convenient, when it's not what I want in the moment? I mean, when was the last time like we asked ourselves that? Okay, so like, am I being a disciple? Am I obeying the things that he's telling me, or am I just in this for me? And I think we need to call something out real quick. Like, we all know that crowds, right, are made up of individuals. So Luke's not trying to say that, like, if you're in a particular crowd, that's what makes you a disciple, right? It's not like, when you sit at the jock table at lunch, it doesn't make you an athlete. No, it's like you can be in a crowd of disciples following Jesus and not be one yourself. When Jesus said, "Why do you call me Lord and you don't do what I say?" That's a very personal question. That has a very personal answer. So the invitation is to me. Am I following Jesus? Am I obeying what he says? Am I a disciple? What am I doing with Jesus? Like, you can't hide from Jesus in a crowd. And actually, like, just showing up in a crowd of people, like I said, it doesn't really make you anything. In fact, maybe it could make things even a little bit more difficult, because like you can kind of diffuse things, right? Like, he's not talking to me. He's talking to that guy over there because I know him, right? Like, it's easy it's not about me. He's talking about over here, when really Jesus is looking at me dead in the eyes and going, "Randall, what are you doing? Are you going to obey? Are you following me?" He's asking us, he's like, are we going to obey or not? So showing up on the weekends, tuning in online, like even serving on a team or serving our city, those are all great things that even Jesus asks us to do. But it's not just that, right? Like, each and every one of us has to come to the end of ourselves and trust that Jesus forgives and ask him to lead our life. So all of those individuals that were following Jesus together, they made up the crowd. So can you imagine what it would be like to be in a crowd of disciples who are following Jesus? Like, literally being with a group, no matter what the size, a group of people who are living a life that's following Jesus. Like many of you guys are, right? For you guys watching online, if you were a part of our pre-service, like before the service, I poked my head in and kind of showed a picture of the crowd that I was a part of in college, that I am so eternally grateful for the way that those guys guided me and shaped me and pointed me towards Jesus. So I don't know what that crowd is for you, but think back to the dancing guy, right? Like, one guy, it's kind of cool. More people show up. It's like, wow, look at that. And all of a sudden, there's a sea of people. Now, that's a movement. So Jesus calls us to be the light of the world. So Matthew 5, "You are the light of the world. A town built on a hill cannot be hidden. Neither do people light up a lamp and put it under a bowl. Instead, they put it on a stand, and it gives light to everyone in the house. In the same way, let your light shine before others, that they may see your good deeds and glorify your Father in heaven." So, how does that work? Reconnecting. Boom. Okay, it did it. All right, are we ready for this? Okay, we're gonna try it. All right, so this is a map of St. Louis. Yes. Okay, so I live, where do I live? I live here. Oh, see, Steve-O, what's it doing? Oh, is all the things that I'm doing showing up? I live right here. Yeah, there it is. Okay, so I live, so stop by sometime, bring pie, we'll have a good time. Like this past week or so, like I went, like this is where I work, right? I also went, I went up to, got offline there. I went to our Mid-Rivers campus there. I went and had dinner with a friend. I went and actually had dinner with a different friend down here. Went up 109 because that's what you do, right? And then we went out to eat there. I went, my wife and I actually went on a serve day, and we served somewhere up in this area here, went downtown. Actually went to go see my buddy Hawkins. And so like this is just a couple of the places that I've been to over the past several weeks, right? It's not everywhere, don't stalk me, but like this is like where I've been the past couple weeks, right? But earlier, I asked people who attend all of our sites at Fenton, Grants Trail, Mid-Rivers, like, do the same thing. Like draw on the map where it is that you've been over the past week or two or several weeks, okay? And so this is what they, it's gone. It's so disappointing. Can you just believe me that like it's amazing and it's like way lit up and like there's yellow close your eyes and just imagine like the map of St. Louis and there's yellow everywhere like a highlighter, right? But that's what it was. Now imagine though if we were to like pass the iPad around and like everybody got to highlight where you were. Like that's the opportunities that God gives us to interact with our world. But that's just for those of us in St. Louis, right? I know there's a bunch of people watching online who don't live in St. Louis. Can we pull up that graphic? We have that, good. So like this is where people join us online week in and week out. Like that's pretty cool, right? But that's just the country. So take a step out and like, so this is the map of people like around the world who tune in to what God's doing here, right? And I like that's kind of crazy. But like just think of the kingdom impact that can happen, right? Every spot on this map, these places where we live, is where we get to be a light. It's where we get to make a difference. So like the shepherds, we get to tell everybody the good news of great joy for all the people. And we do that with our words and our action. But let's not get confused, okay? Like this is not about us. This is not about the crossing and how cool we think we are or anything like that. Like no. In fact, you would be so proud of like our pastors and staff and the relationships that we have with other churches and other organizations. Like there are a ton of great churches in the St. Louis area who love God, who hold up God's word as true and are pointing people to Jesus. And like we get to link arms with them and do some amazing things. We get to champion what God's doing in their churches because we're all in the kingdom together. And that's just what God calls us to do, to link arms with people who are following Jesus, to partner with other churches and other organizations, to show the world what it looks like to link arms and to encourage each other and to champion each other. But obviously, dots and lines on maps doesn't mean we're being a light, right? Like we actually have to get out and interact with our world. Those lines and dots are opportunities that God is placing before us. So following Jesus means we actually have to do something. Living a life of obedience means it actually matters how we treat people. It actually matters how we serve people. It matters the things we say, both out loud and typing on the internet. It actually matters how I treat my family, how I love my neighbor. It matters what it looks like when we disagree, how we handle conflict, how quick I am to apologize. See, when Jesus asks us to do something, like we do it. And as individuals, we give our life to Jesus and he moves in and begins to change us. Our life begins to be formed by his Spirit. Our homes begin to change. Our school, where we work, my world, the world that I interact with personally each and every week, that begins to change. And your world begins to change. And then my world interacts with your world and we link arms and the world gets a little bit bigger and then we link arms with somebody else and then that world begins to change and all of a sudden, like our communities and our neighborhoods and our region begins to change. The next thing you know, we're a crowd of disciples who are following Jesus. So fast forward. Luke tells us, now we're to the book of Acts, Luke tells us that Peter is like preaching to the crowds, right? And he's telling the crowds about the God of the universe who pours himself into flesh, who modeled what it looked like to live a life with God, who talks about God's love for the people. He talks about sin and God's forgiveness of people. He talks about Jesus' death and resurrection and coming again. And Luke tells us that when Peter was finished preaching, those who accepted his message were baptized, and about 3,000 were added to their number that day. So the crowds just keep getting bigger. More and more people hear about Jesus and how he's inviting them into a life with him, how he invites them to follow him, and they do. So if you're checking this whole thing out and you're trying to figure out who Jesus is and what this has to do with you and what does it mean to follow him, then let's go. Let's ask those questions. Let's dive in that together. That happens all the time around here. But if you want to know what it means to follow Jesus, this is a piece of it. So could you imagine what our region would look like if we actually loved each other like Jesus did? If we were a crowd of disciples that served our neighbors? If we were a crowd of disciples that put our differences aside and focused on him? What would our neighborhoods be like? Our schools, our work? That's what this whole like For the Lou movement's about, right? And so many of you guys have jumped in on this. Like you're taking God's call, calling us to care for those around us really seriously. You're sharing his love. You're caring for the poor. You're loving your neighbor. You're serving people that you don't even know. You're crossing divides. It's you. It's you and your friends. It's you and your families. You're linking arms. You're doing this together. And in a very real way, you are lighting up our city. See, amazing things happen when you bring your gifts and I bring my gifts, and we do this together, and then somebody else brings theirs. And all of a sudden, it's this movement, right? That's how a movement starts. God is calling us into this restoration work. That's how we light up a city. A couple weekends ago, our team actually went to a couple of the places where people were serving, right? And they were, we kind of interviewed them and just kind of took some pictures of what was going on and what's going on here. And we got to talk to one of our worship leaders, Lloyd. Lloyd, who was so compelled about what it means to light up our city. He wrote a song about that. So if you're waiting to jump in, man, let's go, let's do it. If you got questions, ask. Let's do this thing. If you're, like we've already talked about it, like if you're wondering, like, okay, so is walking into the waters of baptism, is that my next step into following Jesus? Then come on, let's have those conversations. But to all of us, God is calling us into this grand adventure. So watch this.
Well, when Jesus calls us to be the city on a hill, I think it's a call to action. I think he's telling us, look, you need to get some skin in the game. You need to get dirty. You need to get your hands dirty and get out there and be my hands and my feet.
We are here to link arms with the community here in order to provide a space that will hopefully provide some smiles on some people's faces, some people that need to see some action, some results from some things going on. But more than anything else, I just think that God calls us into a community like this, and it gets done. And it gets done usually by multiple people, sometimes organizations, sometimes just like us individuals out here. Maybe the next time we show up here, things are actually getting planted. You know, we don't know. We're not counting the minutes, we're not counting the days, we're counting the opportunities. And those opportunities that God gives us are just so wonderful and so great. And even have to come maybe even 45 minutes or some people maybe even an hour to get to this place, it's worth it.
And we are better when we do this together. So this is not going to happen overnight. This is not going to happen by us simply praying. This is going to happen by us actually getting out there and actively seeking these things out.
My first thought was the fact is that there's a bunch of fireflies right here in this little garden right here. And we're beaming this little light on this neighborhood, and people are noticing. And I think light has a lot to do with the fact is that action is taking place. You know, I think something happens when you turn a switch on, light goes on, it attracts something. Light always attracts something, and it always breaks darkness. And so just the thought and idea that if there is darkness in this neighborhood, I pray to God that this little light, all of our little glows here make a difference for people, that they can see something happening in the region and in their neighborhood.
So this whole thought of being the light of the world, being city lights, needs to be more than a song. It needs to be more than the words that we sing together. But I think that us as believers need to actively live this out. After we leave out of these doors, let us be the city lights, the lights that shines on a hill that cannot be hid.
City lights flashing bright. We're on a hill we cannot hide. To be the salt of the earth, declare your name and preserve your legacy and make it glorious. Your word will last forever. It's here to stay, and nothing can turn me away from your love. 'Cause you're my portion. Let's sing it out. Let's live victorious. City lights, we are the city lights. Come on. City lights shining in the darkness. City lights, we are the city lights. City lights shining in the darkness. Oh yeah. City lights shining in the darkness. Oh Lord. those lights and let's shine throughout the week. God bless you. Have a wonderful week, and we'll see you next time. Woo!